Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 326. We're doing our 2021 NFL mock draft video. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get this mock going. I'm rocking the third pick in this one, so I get to really kickstart the draft since we don't know what the 49ers are going to be doing.
Yeah, that's right. And also our special guest today, Charlie Campbell, our senior NFL draft analyst at WalterFootball.com. Charlie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to be with you guys again. It's been too long.
Yeah, right. So the NFL draft is up in 9 days. Pretty excited, but also feel like I'm not ready for it. So hopefully this live mock draft on our podcast video will help us out and help us prepare for the draft. So we're going to do that. We're going to take turns picking throughout the first round. Before we begin, please hit like, subscribe, comment below. I've been told all that helps out. So please help us out if you want to help out the show or send this video to someone who likes football. So let's begin. I have the first pick, and I'm not going to pick Patrick Surtain. He's 50,000 to 1 on Bovada for some reason. So I'm going to go with the obvious pick and go with Trevor Lawrence. Quite frankly, I think Johnny Lawrence has a better chance than Patrick Surtain. So here we go. Lawrence to Jacksonville. So here we go. Number 2, Charlie.
2, the Jets are going to take Zack Wilson. That's who they've settled in on. They had discussions throughout the process, really going over every possible option, and Zack Wilson is the guy there, future franchise quarterback. We'll see if they get it right this time, but that's the direction they're going to go.
And I've got the third pick. We're going with the quarterback here for the 49ers because why else would they trade up? Now, the question is it going to be Justin Fields? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Mac Jones? There has been buzz for all three of them. I know Charlie has reported that other executives anticipate it'll be Justin Fields. I'm going to go with Fields here because it really could be any of them, but on my board, Fields is the highest rated. He's a great athlete. He's got a great arm. I think if the 49ers are looking for a surefire upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Justin Fields could do it and could be ready to contribute pretty early. But again, it could be any of the three, but let's see what happens if Fields is the pick here.
Yeah, so I think Atlanta wants Fields from what I hear, but I think they're going to take a quarterback. So I've gone back and forth on this, and I'm thinking that like they're not going to be this high that often. And I think they know that. I think Arthur Blank is aware of that, and so I think he's going to go with a quarterback. And if it's not Fields, I think it's going to be Trey Lance, who has way more upside than Mac Jones. So I think Trey Lance is going to be Atlanta's pick at number 4.
And Cincinnati at 5, this is really a dream scenario for them in terms of having their choice of any player, non-quarterback in this draft. It's like picking number 1 overall. So, with that being the case, I think even though the heartstrings of Joe Burrow are yearning for Jamar Chase, I think the Bengals would go with the best player in the draft aside from Trevor Lawrence and take Kyle Pitts. He's more rare. Receivers like Chase, the year in and year out, they're great receiver drafts coming in. They took T. Higgins high last year. Tyler Boyd's a solid receiver. They can get good receivers in upcoming drafts and years to come. But Kyle Pitts, you're not going to have another shot at a guy like this. So I think with the quarterbacks going 1 through 4, Kyle Pitts would be the pick to Cincinnati.
Yeah, and with Kyle Pitts being the pick there, I think the Dolphins in this scenario are lucky to get Penei Sewell and have him on the board. They have a decent offensive line. They did invest in 2 early picks last year. Robert Hunt was a second-round pick and played right tackle. Austin Jackson, a first-round pick, played left tackle. But I think you have to go with Sewell. He's one of the better players on the board. You need to protect Tua Tagovailoa, and either Jackson or Hunt could kick inside to guard. A lot of people thought Hunt was more of a natural guard going into last year's draft. So maybe you move him from right tackle back inside, and he's an absolute stud there. And you just add more depth to your offensive line because you also have Eric Flowers up front. Matt Skura was signed in free agency, and Solomon Kinley was good at right guard last year. So you have 6 good offensive linemen there. So I think Sewell also has Hall of Fame upside. He was great as a 19-year-old in the Pac-12. So having him protecting Tua would give Brian Flores a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, the Lions have to be upset that Sewell's off the board. I feel like that they could really use him, but it's not like they can't fill a need here. And they could still take Rashawn Slater, who makes sense. They need offensive line help, but given that they lost Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones this offseason, they need a receiver. They have nothing at the position for Jared Goff at all, so they have to go. I feel like they have to go with a receiver here or in the second round. But given that Jamar Chase is available, he's such a great talent. I don't see how the Lions pass up on Chase if he's available, so he's the pick here.
And Carolina at 8, I think, would go with J.C. Horn, the cornerback from South Carolina. They really didn't replace James Bradbury after losing him in free agency last year. Dante Jackson is a bit inconsistent. He'd be better off as your number 2, number 3 corner rather than your number 1. And so they really need a number 1 corner for that defense. And I think J.C. Horn, his ability to run the route, prevent separation. I think he's got a little more coverage ability than Patrick Surtain. So I think he's the inclination there in Carolina at 8.
That is music to my ears because I have a 9-1 bet out on Horn to be the first defensive player chosen. So if that happens, I will be very happy. But now I'm on the board with the Broncos. They have a lot of options here. There are 2 great receivers on the board, but they don't need receivers. I'm actually going to go in a direction that I have not seen many times. I think that they could, in this scenario, take Mac Jones and have him fight with Drew Lock for the starting quarterback job. Because in many ways, Jones is the anti-Lock. Lock has all this great arm talent and upside, but he turns the ball over like crazy and is inconsistent. Mac Jones, we saw last year. Does he have the greatest arm? Does he have the greatest skill set ever? No, but his ball placement and accuracy is elite. And if he could avoid turnovers, that Broncos team could be very, very different, especially with so many good weapons on offense. Now, you can make the case for Rashawn Slater as a tackle here or going for a cornerback or a linebacker here too. I could see that, but I want to see what happens if we give them Mac Jones, and I really don't want Mac Jones to be on the board when the Patriots pick because I will absolutely give it to them. So I'm going to go Mac Jones to the Broncos.
Okay, number 10, Dallas. They're really hurting for defense, and there's some talk that they could trade up for Kyle Pitts or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you can't ever count out Jerry Jones doing something like that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just think it's a dream scenario. I think he knows that he has to address either his defense or his offensive line, which is pretty bad. So Rashawn Slater could be the pick, but I think it's going to be Patrick Surtain, who they might think he's the top corner in this class, like maybe J.C. Horn, but I think they like Surtain a lot, and they definitely scouted him last year because they drafted Trevon Diggs, so they really know a lot about Surtain as well. So I think Surtain will be the pick here to really strengthen their secondary.
And next up, the Giants at 11. I think this pick is coming down to the Alabama receivers. I think the heartstrings of the Giants are pulled towards Devontae Smith. Most of the consensus around the league is towards Jalen Waddle because he has a thicker build, isn't as thin-framed as Devontae Smith. But I think that as we saw last year with that 4th overall pick, Andrew Thomas had kind of slid in a bit in that draft class, and other people thought the other guys would go ahead of him, but that was just the guy who they preferred. So I think Devontae Smith is the preference in New York. Give them a really solid route runner, number 2 receiver to go with Kenny Galladay. Really take advantage of safeties looking to load the box against Saquon Barkley and really try and help Daniel Jones make big strides this season.
And the Eagles were going to take whatever Alabama receiver the Giants didn't take, in my estimation. And they're probably happier that it's Jalen Waddle because last year they chose another fast Jalen Reagor. That didn't quite pan out as I think they hoped. But Waddle has true number 1 receiver capabilities and is a true deep threat. I think if he didn't get hurt last year, we'd have had more talk about him rivaling Chase and Smith for the top receiving spot in this class. I know, as you reported, Charlie, he's in consideration for a top 8 pick, so the late buzz is coming in. But I think the Eagles would be absolutely excited to land Waddle here. And as is almost always the case in every mock draft I do, we've had at least 3 Alabama players come off the board in a row. We're actually at 4 in a row now.
Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna have to break the chain there. So unfortunately, the Chargers are not going to go Alex Leatherwood, which they could. But I mentioned this guy 6 picks ago, Rashawn Slater, the tackle / guard / center from Northwestern. He can play any position. The Chargers need offensive line help, and I think they'd be so shocked if Slater fell to them at 13. They probably don't expect him to be on the board. But yeah, this is I think this is a no-brainer for them. They still need a left tackle. They made some good upgrades in their offensive line this offseason, but they still need to address that position, and they could do that here with Slater.
And now with the Vikings at 14, I'm really torn on this pick. They could use defensive line help, offensive line, but looking at the track record of this regime, they've really done well drafting defensive linemen on day 2 and in the mid rounds. When you think of Donnell Hunter and some of the other guys that they've been able to get on that line, they really haven't gone for the first round. I think Sharif Floyd was the last one they took in the first round, 2013, I want to say. Could be wrong on that, but regardless, the offensive line still could use more help, could still use tackle help. So I'm going to have them go with Elijah Vera Tucker, the tackle guard from USC. He's a 2-position starter. I know some team people think he's one of the best players in the draft. The versatility they love. He's strong in the ground game, athletic, quick. I think this is a really nice value for the Vikings because you're just going to be able to field a more talented offensive line with his flexibility to play at a variety of spots.
And with Elijah Vera Tucker off the board, I think the Patriots pick here is going to be on the defensive side. I would be surprised if they don't go defense here or trade down. I mean, maybe if one of the quarterbacks or receivers falls to them, they will do that. But I have a feeling this pick is going to be on defense. Now, Micah Parsons is on the board, so people might look at that and say, oh, Bill Belichick can get a guy who might be one of the top 5 players in this draft when it's all said and done. But I think he would be a little bit worried about the maturity concerns there. So I'm going to give another good scheme fit linebacker in Zaven Collins. He fits that prototypical mold for the Patriots when they run their 3-4, 4-3 hybrid schemes. He can play on the edge. He can be a stand-up linebacker, stand-up rusher. He has a lot of size, length, athleticism. I think that Belichick could draft him, make him the heir apparent to Kyle Van Noy and Dante Hightower on that defense as a first-round star. And, you know, he might be afraid that if he trades down, Brian Flores might grab him at 18 to help out the linebacker position. So I'm going to go Zaven Collins here. I also want to note that if J.C. Horn was somehow on the board here, I think the Patriots would be very interested in him. But as Charlie noted, it's probable that Horn will be off the board at this point.
Yeah, speaking of Horn, I think Arizona would also take him at 16, so that might be his floor. So he's off the board. Surtain's off the board, so maybe they go with the other corner, I guess, top 3 corner, Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. So there are some injury concerns there, but the Cardinals, they really need some corner help. Like, their secondaries in shambles. And think about all the receivers in the division. Like, they have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Like, how do they cover these guys with their current secondary? They need to win the division. That's a super tough division, and I think they need to. The way they do that is to get better in the secondary, and I think they do that with Farley.
Yeah, and with the Raiders at 17, this is an interesting pick because I'm going to have them go with Alex Leatherwood, and I know that he's a love-hate prospect depending on which team you talk with, but I think back to the time when I covered John Gruden in 2008, his last year with the Bucs, and I learned a lot of football from him. And he was not a guy with finesse offensive lineman. That was just not a John Gruden offensive lineman. So I don't see Christian Darrisaw being the pick for them because Darrisaw just does not have a mean streak. He doesn't block with urgency. You don't see him finishing guys off. Leatherwood has excellent size, length, can cut off the edge on speed rushers, really experienced, has played on championship teams and championship games. The knock on him was the run blocking and lack of physicality, but that came on during his senior year. He showed improvement there. So I think he just fits John Gruden more than Darrisaw, and obviously they need a right tackle, so I'm going to have him go with Leatherwood.
I like the Leatherwood fit there. I'm higher on him than most. Again, I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm a little bit biased there. We got the Dolphins on the clock now. They will take Micah Parsons, ending his small slide. Parsons is extremely talented. He just has some maturity concerns, some disturbing hazing allegations against him. And he sat out last season. So, the sitting out has kind of made those issues more prominent just because he wasn't on the field to silence them. So there was a lot of time to talk about that. I think he's an insane athlete. He's a very good player. And I think Brian Flores can absolutely get the most out of him and turn him into a potentially elite linebacker. And Miami needs a true 3-down linebacker. So I think this is a perfect fit. And this is about the range I would expect Parsons to go in. I don't think he's going to go as high as a lot of people think just because of those maturity issues.
All right, so the Redskins are on the board at 19. So I think they could go linebacker here. If Parsons were available, I think I would have made him the pick. There are 2 other linebackers in the first round, and I think either would be a good option. But given how good this left tackle class is, I think this would be a good time for the Redskins to address that position. It's been, past couple of years, it's been a weakness with Trent Williams out and then now in San Francisco. So they can fix that problem here. And, Christian Darrisaw, which Charlie just mentioned, I've had him go in the early teens, so I haven't had him available here for a while. So I haven't had that chance to put him in my mock draft to the Redskins, but I think he would make sense for Washington at number 19.
And with the Bears at pick 20, obviously the quarterbacks are gone, so that's not an option. I think then they have a few routes they could go. They could look at cornerback to replace Kyle Fuller. I think you could look at offensive line. They've needed offensive line help for years. And then linebacker because Danny Trevathan's aging and not the player he once was. But, all things considered here, I think I'll end up having them go with a linebacker in Jamin Davis from Kentucky. They seem to like these kind of big upside players, guys with big skill sets. Davis definitely fits that with his size, speed. His tape last year at Kentucky was really impressive. He's been a riser through the process, and that pro day was just off the charts. So I could see the Bears just falling in love with him and feeling like we can get nice cornerback and offensive line help on the second day. There's more depth at those positions, and linebacker, it just isn't quite as talented.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I like the upside there. The Colts are also probably going to go with upside here. Their biggest needs are at left tackle and on the edge, in my estimation, on defense. I think they could go with the tackle here. Tevin Jenkins, Sam Cosmi, and I'm a fan of Liam Eichenberg. Could all garner consideration. But again, the depth is better there than it is at defensive end. Kwity Paye is still available, and he's a really great athlete. He has a pretty big frame. And I think the Colts could look at him and say, hey, we can turn him into a really good starting caliber edge player. And, he doesn't have the most experience at Michigan. He didn't play a ton last year because he opted out towards the end of the year, I believe, or suffered an injury. But I think they'll look at him and say, hey, yeah, Kwity Paye, let's grab him. He can be our future edge rusher. And then they'll look for a tackle on day 2. And maybe Eichenberg makes it to their pick in the early 50s. So I think Kwity Paye makes more sense here.
Okay, number 22, the Titans. Jacob, you just mentioned him, Tevin Jenkins. So the Titans have lost 3 right tackles in the span of 2 off seasons. Jack Conklin, then they drafted Isaiah Wilson, and then Dennis Kelly left as well. So that's a position they really need to fill. I know their defense is so weak. They could really go any position on defense. But they love to play smash mouth football, and for Derrick Henry to reach his max potential, they need to really fix that need at right tackle. So I think Tevin Jenkins would be a good pick for Tennessee.
And with the Jets at pick 23, I think they have a lot of options here. I think given the depth of cornerback with the guys available, say Tyson Campbell, Robinson from UCF, Newsome from Northwestern, the other one from Georgia, Eric Stokes, Asante Samuel, Kelvin Joseph. I think they'll target a guy like Kelvin Joseph early in the second round, and then you'll use this pick on some offensive line help for Zack Wilson and take a player like Jackson Carman from Clemson. He's 6'5", 340. big, really athletic. That's the same description of Mekhi Becton a year ago. They really didn't do a lot to help improve that offensive line in free agency. Obviously, it needs to get better, especially with a quarterback coming from BYU and a really easy schedule to now the NFL. Huge jump. He's starting right away. So I think Jackson Carman, with his experience at Clemson playing in big games, he could play guard, could play right tackle. He's a versatile athlete. The questions with him are character. So if they are okay with the character, I could see him being a fit with the Jets there at 23.
Yeah, and the Steelers, they're yet another team that could consider an offensive tackle, but based off what we've been hearing in recent days, sounds like they want a bell cow running back, which is understandable because they could not run the ball at all last year. So Najee Harris is on the board. He's a big physical runner. He's athletic. He can catch the ball. He can do it all. So I think he's an ideal replacement for them for James Conner. He should be an upgrade there. And if Harris can run behind the offensive line the Steelers currently have, that will take a ton of pressure off Ben Roethlisberger. And, they'll be able to run more of the short passing game they ran last year. The team's eventually figured out because they'll be able to better execute the run game and play action. So Najee Harris seems like a good fit here for the Steelers.
Okay, Jacksonville is on the board again. I have both Jacksonville picks, so that's exciting. So they need to really fix everything on their defense, which is like they had one of the best defenses 3 years ago, and now it's one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Like usually when a team drafts a quarterback, they go offense, but their offense is pretty solid. They need to fix the other side of the ball, and they have a big hole on their defensive line with Calais Campbell gone. So I think they can fill that with Christian Barmore. And if you think about it, how do you beat the teams in that division? You have to stop, Derrick Henry. You have to stop Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, and with Houston, I guess you can just show up and just win. But you have to stop those guys, and you really need a big guy in the middle of the defensive line, and also someone who could really pressure the quarterbacks as well. With Carson Wentz in the division now, so I think Christian Barmore would be a good fit for Jacksonville.
And with Cleveland at pick 26, I'm going to have them go with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker from Notre Dame. I think he makes a ton of sense, as Walt hit on there, in terms of matching up with your division rivals. And with Owusu-Koramoah being that run chase fast linebacker who can drop into coverage, is also dangerous as a blitzer, can be a quarterback spy. That's really going to help them to defend Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, really solidify the middle of their defense, help them to cover tight ends, which has been an issue for the Browns. So I think that Cleveland would be really happy if him or Jamin Davis or Parsons, less likely, but one of those three linebackers gets to their pick.
Yeah, and staying in that division, the Ravens are on the clock here. It is taking everything in my power not to give them Landon Dickerson from Alabama. He fits like the character that they want all the time. He's from Alabama. They love picking Alabama players, and they could use a center. Patrick McCary and Matt Skura had a lot of snap issues last year. But I think that they will pass on center and grab one maybe in the second round or third round because it's a deep offensive line class. So long story short, I think they'll grab a pass rusher. I would have Jalen Phillips from Miami as the top-rated pass rusher left right now. There are some concerns, concussion history with him, but his athleticism is off the charts. And I could see him fitting really well into that Baltimore defense and just finding a way to contribute right off the bat. So I'll go with Phillips here. You could convince me a number of different directions. As always, the Ravens are going to find a player that falls to them, and they are going to benefit from it.
Yeah, it seems like that always happens. So 28, the Saints, they lost some players this offseason because they had the least cap space available in the NFL. They were actually like 30-something million over the cap at one point. They had to cut some players. They cut some players in their secondary, and they really need to fix that issue. They had a problem at safety last year too. So I think you can argue that they would take Trevon Moehrig, the safety from TCU. Like we talked about last week. There's a chance that a couple of safeties go first, but I think Moehrig is probably the best player at the position. So he makes sense for the Saints at 28.
And at 29, I think Green Bay is really happy in this situation because there hasn't been a run at cornerback since Caleb Farley going off the board at 16. So they really have a lot of good options here. And I'd have them take Tyson Campbell, the cornerback from Georgia. He's got a great skill set, big, fast, athletic, just has to develop his ability to play the ball. But with the two veterans they have and Jair Alexander, they can really bring Campbell along at his own speed. Gives them a talented trio and gives them depth. So I think that they would go with a cornerback here. It's a question of which one, but I think Campbell could be the safest and make the most sense for them at 29.
Yeah, I think the Bills could also consider a cornerback here. Greg Newsome could be an option for them. I think that they may look at the defensive line at this point, though, and just look for someone with upside. I think that Jerry Hughes, he's getting older. So is Mario Addison. They have AJ Epinesa on the roster. But outside of that, they don't have a ton of edge rush talent. So they could stand to invest in someone. So we talked about this guy on the podcast last week, Jason Oweh from Penn State. He is an insane athlete. The production wasn't there from him last year, but if you watch him on tape, he has the look of a productive player, and he was just unlucky last year. Some team's going to fall in love with that athleticism. I could see the Bills taking a chance on him, Sean McDermott saying, hey, let's develop him behind Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison. So I think that's a really good fit for them. They're also a threat to take a running back here, but again, I think they can wait until the second round to do that.
So the Chiefs are on the board, and we saw what happened to them in the Super Bowl. They couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes at all. They made some nice additions, but they lost both tackles, and they haven't really addressed that position. So they really need to focus on tackle in the first couple of rounds, maybe even 2 picks in the early stages of the draft. So I think right now they would take Jalen Mayfield. Andy Reid has a good history of tackles from Michigan, so he may like the idea of having Mayfield protect Patrick Mahomes.
And at 32 for Tampa Bay, I have them taking Gregory Rousseau, the defensive end from Miami. I think just given the age of JPP, given the size on Shaq Barrett, and the fact that they're a team that has to protect leads and get after the quarterback for 4 quarters, would make sense to add some depth in the pass rush. You can rotate Rousseau, keep JPP and Shaq Barrett healthy for the full season, hopefully, by cutting down on their workload on rundowns. Rousseau gives them some size and strength as well. And he has some issues to develop, but I think learning behind those guys and how they have a real rush plan to get after the quarterback will really help him in his development from being a one-year wonder at Miami. So at 32, I could see the Bucs just looking at the best defensive player available potentially, and I think Rousseau might fit that as far as a short-term guy that can help them, and then a long-term starter to potentially replace JPP.
Okay, yeah, so that is it for our 2021 NFL mock draft. So I thought a lot of great picks there. I think everything made sense. We had a couple questions. So Chillage asks, how would you grade Zack Wilson to the Jets? So this is something I have to consider because we grade every pick on the site right now. I think it's a B plus. It makes sense. It's not like an outstanding pick. It's not a great value because we expect Zack Wilson to go there. But they obviously need a quarterback, and people think he's the next best quarterback. I personally would take Justin Fields, but I think it's close enough to not downgrade the grade. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I agree that I would personally take Justin Fields, but I do think with what Wilson did last year, he showed enough that he's worthy. He's got a really good skill set, arm talent, athleticism. So he's intelligent as well. So I think he has a lot going for him. So with the Jets deciding to hit the reset on the quarterback position, I don't think I'm not terrified that this is going to be a bust for them. I think that it has the potential to work out.
This might be the first time I'm like lower on a grade than both of you guys. I have a B minus. It's not like earth shattering. Just by my personal estimation, I would take Justin Fields ahead of him because he has more experience. Like you guys touched on, Zack Wilson was excellent last year. I just have minor concerns about, is he a one-year wonder? And like, will he be ready to carry the Jets if they don't quite surround him with enough talent that first year? Like, I don't want to see a situation where he starts off his first year with a big jump in competition and he's kind of all out of sorts or anything. So that I'll downgrade it a bit from that perspective. But in terms of upside, you're not gonna find another quarterback in this class outside of Lawrence that has Wilson's upside overall because of his arm talent.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, the 1 year thing is definitely a concern. So here's another one. Any thoughts on JC Horn under 13.5 at Bovada? This is something that Jacob and I talked about last week, where we think that there's a good chance he's chosen under that number, and yeah, I'd probably go under. But there, he could fall to like 16 as we discussed as well. So what do you guys think about this?
I'd definitely go the under on that one. I feel pretty confident that he's going to go earlier than a lot of the media expect. But I think that if he doesn't go to Carolina, he stands a good chance of going to Dallas. If the receivers are off the board, I think he could go to the Giants. I think he could go to the Eagles as well. The Chargers at 13. So there's a lot of options there. In Denver, even if they decided not to go quarterback and they're just kind of blowing smoke, they don't really like the options after the San Francisco trade, that could be another landing spot. So with that many options there and him being this good of a player, I think that's a really nice bet to take the under on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As Walt mentioned earlier, Horn's floor is 16. Like, I don't think he would get past that point. And it appears that his ceiling might be as high as number 8. So it would seem to me that there's a better than 50% chance of that happening. So I love the under here. If Horn doesn't go top 10, I would think that he would have a good chance of going the Eagles at 12. So yeah, I think for all the reasons you stated, Charlie, I think go under on Horn here.
Okay. So we have 2 more comments. It's want to become famous, buy followers and viewers. Do not go to that URL that we have on the screen there. You will have a virus on your computer, I'm sure. All right. So Finns Doc says Sewell at 6 and Parsons at 18 for the Finns. Combo haven't seen before. 2 generational talents, but no weapons in the first round. Not sure I feel about that. As far as weapons, like they need a running back, but you can get a running back in the second round. And they signed Will Fuller, so it's not like they haven't added weapons this offseason. And I think if Pitts is at 6, that means Sewell's probably gone, so they probably take him there. But you can get weapons later. I don't think that you can just like. I would not be upset about Sewell and Parsons at 6 and 18. Sounds like a great draft to me. It's a great start of the draft, at least. So yeah. What do you guys think? I think that it's a great first round for the Dolphins, and they can get a running back and then a receiver later.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think of Tua being left-handed quarterback and Austin Jackson's a better fit on the left side than he is a right tackle, I think Sewell could be that blindside protector on the right tackle and kind of what we would all consider the franchise left tackle. It's just flipped around because Tua is the lefty. So in Robert Hunt, you can kick him inside to guard. Eric Flowers obviously has found a home in the NFL at guard. When it didn't work out at tackle, he's turned into a really solid guard, but he's not, necessarily a long-term answer. And then with the depth there, Kinley had weight issues at Georgia. So while he played really well as a rookie, that's something that's going to have to be monitored because at Georgia, he played really well the year before, and then he got heavy in his final year, and that's why he slid to the middle of the draft. So I think like Walt hit on that, having that depth there with 6 offensive linemen and the way injuries happen in the NFL, that's not a bad thing. And having that elite blindside protector for Tua, when you really, they need Tua to save their jobs is the bottom line. So protecting him and giving him time to get the ball downfield to Fuller and Devontae Parker. I don't think you can really go wrong with that.
Yeah, and I'm the one who mocked both of these picks, so I'm glad you guys agree with them. But I love the point you made, Charlie, about Sewell playing the blind side on the right side, because that's not even something that I've considered in this one. I think Sewell, just like you said, gives you more depth up front on the offensive line, and you can never have enough offensive line depth. I've covered Washington for the last 4 or 5 years, and there was one year where I think they were on like their 9th string offensive guard. It was absolutely ridiculous. So the more depth you have, the better. And I think Sewell could be a generational talent, as Finn's doc alluded to. And, maybe they're trying to make up for passing on a different Oregon Duck last year by taking this Oregon Duck here. And as for Parsons, that was just a case of best player available, and he fills a need too. And to the point about the weapons, totally understandable. You want to surround Tua with as many weapons as possible. But if you're looking to add receiver talent and running back talent, there's always depth at running back, and this class is going to be extremely deep at receiver. So even if they don't take one in the first round, you could take 2 in the later rounds, or just take as many as you want after the first round and just say whoever works out, and just build up depth that way.
Yeah, with their 2 second-round picks, they're going to have really good options available at running back and receiver. So, we've seen a lot of second-round receivers turn into really good players, whether it's Devontae Adams or Allen Robinson. It's a position that, you can get good players there, and obviously running back, that's where most running backs go these days. So with those 2 second rounders, they can definitely add some good weapons. And I think Parsons is a great scheme fit, as Jacob hit on. I think really what he does is best is blitz and get upfield and fire his gun and just use that speed to get into the backfield. So I think Brian Flores could use him in a variety of ways, but I think he could be a really dangerous edge rusher for them as well. And Flores likes a versatile defense that he can move guys around, so it's harder to know what they're going to do post snap. So I really like that fit for Miami.
Yeah, it's a great point about the running backs. I'd rather wait to the second round. I think historically it's shown that it's better off to wait on running backs. And I think Pittsburgh's. I think they're the only team that may take a running back in the first round, given that they had 0 running game at all last year. Right. Sorry. All right. Yeah. Last question here from Chris. I have seen Trey Lance over 5.5 and 6.5. Like the risk reward on the over. Thoughts? I would go under on Trey Lance at 5.5 or 6.5. I think he's either 3 or 4 in this draft. What do you guys think?
Man, I'm really torn on that one. I personally, I'm a conservative guy, so I wouldn't bet that one. I like the JC Horn bet a million times more, especially because, gosh, the quarterbacks, sometimes we see these guys slide. It's the Aaron Rodgers, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's tough to predict who's going to be that guy in any particular draft class. So, I personally, if I was going to bet it, man, I might do the over, but I don't feel good about that at all, because I could easily see him going to Atlanta. I could see them trading out and a team moving there, and he goes 4 to, say, Denver. So that is just, to me, a really tough call to make.
So I tend to fall in Charlie's camp on this one, solely for the reason Trey Lance is very raw and very inexperienced. He's also very young. So I could see teams looking at him and saying like, oh, he's going to need like a good couple years to develop. And the only team that I could see giving him a literal couple years to develop would be Atlanta, which is why I love his fit there so much. But at the same time, we've seen, quarterback prospects go ahead of where you anticipate they're going to go. We've seen them slide. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty with this one. I think I would just take the over, just because if Mac Jones goes number 3 overall to the 49ers, then Lance is almost certainly going to go over unless the Falcons surprise and don't like Justin Fields as much as they like Trey Lance, which I would have trouble imagining. So I think I would lean the over on this one, but I also wouldn't bet it. I think this is just it's just too tricky to figure out where we don't know who the third quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, I don't.
Go ahead, Walt.
I was going to say I don't disagree with you guys about not betting this. I wouldn't bet this either. I would go under. I think Atlanta or San Francisco takes him, but you could see him slide. So that could definitely happen. So I would not bet the spot. I would go under. So what were you saying, Charlie?
The Atlanta situation to me is it's such a hard, difficult one to read because they restructured Matt Ryan's contract with pretty much puts him on the team for a couple of years. I mean, if they do deal him after this year, they reduced the pain associated with that, but it's still a significant dead cap hit to move on from him after this season. And do you really, one of the great advantages in the NFL right now is having your starting quarterback on that rookie contract, because you can just spend like crazy the rest of your team when you have your quarterback on this cheap 5-year deal. So you would essentially lose two of that, probably at least one, if not two of those advantage years of Trey Lance sitting behind Matt Ryan from a contract standpoint. And you're, for Arthur Smith and Fontenot, their new GM, how can you really point towards that pick being a good pick, and kind of saying we have the team going in the right direction if he's not on the field and playing. And I don't know. But at the same time, like you guys hit on in the mock, how do you know you're ever going to be picking high enough to get one again? I mean, Matt Ryan, you guys could go 8-8 or 9-7 or 6-10, and you're picking 11th or 12th, and there's no one there, for the next 2 years, and you're stuck in a tough spot of trying to find your long-term starter. So it is just that this is a real difficult situation to figure out, and I don't envy their decision makers, because I could talk myself into either way, and not feel great about the results. So this is a real one of the the hardest decision in the draft is what the Falcons are presented with.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And we saw the Packers make the same exact decision last year with Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers was playing better than Matt Ryan. Not that Matt Ryan is playing poorly or anything, but like Rodgers was on a higher level, and yet the Packers still took Jordan Love, albeit later in the first round, but they still did that. So, Atlanta could still do that. But yeah, I think you're right, Charlie, in saying that it is an extremely difficult position for the Falcons to be in right now. But then again, a lot of teams wish they were up here. San Francisco gave up 2 first-round picks to be able to take a franchise quarterback like this. So I think some teams would envy them as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Atlanta does. I had their pick in this mock draft. I think they go quarterback. I could change my mind later on as, maybe we hear something or just think differently. But I think right now, I think Atlanta would go quarterback, even with the contract situation that you talked about, Charlie. Okay.
Tough call.
Yeah. So I think that's about it for our mock draft. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Once again, hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this with someone. That would mean a lot to us. So yeah, let's Charlie and then Jacob. Do you have anything to plug?
Well, we got so much content going up on the site before draft day, and of course all through the draft, but just scouting reports galore, the position rankings updated before the draft. Of course, we're going to have finishing off the position reviews will be up there as well to kind of rank the players by attribute and see how they compare to last year's prospects, who's the safest guy, who's the biggest bust. So it's kind of an interesting look at the draft class at a position. And then next week, I'm going to have tons of draft rumors every day, Monday through Thursday, trying to get as much info from team guys as they can possibly reveal, and I'll annoy them and text them at crazy hours, and we'll see who responds and helps us out. But one of the great things about a lot of these guys is they don't respond if they can't answer a question. So we've had some really excellent accuracy in terms of the rumors we put up over the past few years. So we'll be grinding it out and not sleeping much and loving every second of it.
Absolutely. And from my perspective, first of all, you guys better be following these two. I'm pointing the wrong way. The mirroring thing on the camera really screws me up, but you better be following these two guys during draft week, because they are the best in the business at getting rumors and accurately projecting picks. My mock draft was very accurate last year, but I cannot take credit for most of that. It was a lot of reporting for them, and I'm pointing with the wrong hand again, almost. But you can follow my work. I'll be working the draft at NBC Sports Boston. I recently redrafted last year's draft just to see what it looks like after 1 year. Complete exercise in futility, but it's fun to see like who falls, who rises, what crazy stuff happens there. So check that out. I'll put it on my Twitter, and you can follow me at Jacob Camenker there. I'll be posting my thoughts, my eventual never-ending quest to post my latest mock draft, which still has not come to fruition. This has been promised week after week for almost a month, but I will get it done this week, and I promise it'll be out hopefully by this weekend, and then I'll have another one on the Thursday of draft day, my final edition. So stay tuned for all that, and let's keep enjoying this draft process. I am very excited for it.
Awesome. Sounds good. When you pointed that way, I was like, who do you have over there that we should follow for this draft? We're at walterfootball.com. Tons of updated mocks. We're going to have updated mocks every single day next week. And Charlie Campbell, I said this before, he produces the best NFL draft content you could read anywhere. So check out his rumors, his mock draft, which is among the most accurate every single year. We have tons of stuff, tons of content. After the draft's over, we're going to jump right into fantasy football. So check that out. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys next week.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye-bye.